you mentioned like a line maybe not working, and you kind of think of it in maybe different places, right? Opening line, closing line, title, like you mentioned. Are there places in your creative process where you've hit the wall, gotten stuck, hit a block? The chapbook that you just mentioned, you said it fell apart and came back together again. So, there's something going on there. So when do you tend to have a plan in place or something like that? Not to make it too formulaic or anything, like when something just isn't working, or you just feel like, yeah, I got that idea over there and I haven't touched it for a while, and you just feel that resistance to go back to it. Any like experience like that come to mind specifically, or through the last book writing process?
Yeah, it's a really good question. When I think my blocks come up in two ways. One is when I have an idea and I don't know how to do it, or I'm feeling self-conscious. And that block usually comes from how I imagine the perception being of the finalized product. And so I'm too much for, and I recognize, I try to get to the point where I'm like, oh, you're thinking too much about the end product. Stop that. It's like really like a self pep talk, like just try to do the mechanics of writing and just really try, like, what is it you're trying to say? Just say that. Don't worry about how it's going to sound to someone else. Just say what you want to say. So there's like that. And then I think also there's blocks where I don't necessarily have a project or a poem that I'm thinking of, and I just feel like I should write, but I'm not writing and I don't know what to write. And that can be really maddening sometimes, because I know that when I write, I feel better about myself and I can process and grow. And so I'm like, come on, like there's growth, like you should be growing right now and you're not, right? Um, and and sometimes I think that that's because I'm like physically stuck and I need to like go out on a walk. And so that I will take a pad and paper or a device or something out with me, um, and just walk around in the woods and see what I can see and start writing as my body is moving. And I find that to be really helpful. But I also have a fundamental belief that we're writing all the time, even when we're not putting words on paper or screen, whatever it may be. And I try to remind myself that just living and being engaged in relationships, or like the act of washing the dishes, or just like having to go to work or whatever, that's all feeding the eventual poem. And that if I can just like let myself off the hook a little bit and experience life, that usually feels better to me. So like right now I haven't written for a while because the collection, just came out, and I always feel like more pressure after that to produce something. And so I'm just like, you don't have to right now. So I guess I'm saying just embrace the block, just be with the block and sit in it.
And I think too, there is maybe a difference between not writing yet being having an awareness or an attentiveness to your whatever your day-to-day, which maybe seems mundane or whatever, just the routine, but maybe going through that routine with that attentiveness, let's say, versus just kind of being tuned out, or just being totally kind of overwhelmed or stressed, or of course we all need breaks too, even from the not writing attentiveness thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think there is something there, because you'll notice next once in a while during one of those mundane commutes, or sitting around, you know, waiting in your car in a parking lot or something, then a poem strikes all of a sudden, right? And where did that come from exactly? So um, yeah, I think there is that nice balance of not being too pressurized to write, but also not totally being disconnected from it either. Um, do you have any tricks of the trade? I guess we maybe mentioned one of them, like moving a line to different parts of the poem. Um, anything that came to mind in terms of like, even just kind of a writing trick that you have in your bag?
A writing trick. Well, I definitely like to, when I feel like I'm getting close to, I should start by saying I like revising work as much as I like writing it, if not more. Um, and there's this point that's a little hard to say, oh, this is exactly when you do this, but recording my work and hearing myself read it is incredibly illuminating every time. And I'll catch things that I just won't catch otherwise. Having a trusted person who knows your work and knows your intention with your work that you can send it to. And I mean, outside of a workshop that you're taking with people you don't know, I mean, outside of maybe a friend who doesn't write, I mean, like another trusted writer, who can say, oh, hey, look at this, look at this, look at this. And it doesn't even to me matter if I agree with what they're saying. It's just another way to get to know the work a little bit more. I highly recommend that. And then also I'm someone who will often switch from, I'll take a poem that's prose and then lineate it, or vice versa, quite a bit to mess with line breaks. And so sometimes I'll have, like upwards of 10 versions of something just messing with line breaks. And it's funny because I should, like a confession, this is not a trick. I do not recommend doing this to anyone, but I compulsively will submit work before I'm like 100% done with it. But I think in the moment that I'm done with it, but then if I would actually like step back, I'd be like, you were not done with that. Why did you submit that? And sometimes those actually are I have noticed that sometimes those get picked up more. And so it's interesting because I'm trying to learn when I think there's something that can be really, a little messiness is okay, I guess is what I'm saying. And sometimes I think editors pick up on that and they're like, or not pick up on that, but appreciate that and find that beauty in it, and that you can make it too neat and take some of the original chaos out of it.
That's interesting. Yeah, I think that's not the worst. I mean, you didn't label this as advice, but it's not the worst advice. Maybe in 6 poems that you're submitting, one of them is maybe a new one that you're not like fully settled on. Just, what the heck? It's worth maybe that kind of approach to it once in a while.
I mean, do you
Um,
feel with your writing that you can get to a point where a poem could not be revised anymore? Because I don't know that I reached that point really. I feel like I could always continue to shape and mold in some ways.
yeah, and I mean the trick is to, if that's considered a trick, to, yeah, just to kind of like let it go. I mean, could it be revised more? Of course. But I guess there's ones that I'm just good with the way the way they ended up, and that's the way they ended up.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, definitely if you allow it, you could definitely find some changes to be made, even the ones that were published before, for sure.